The Morning Drive is sponsored by Power Metallic. To find out more about the company, please visit their website at powermetallic.com. Follow the Money Investor Group is a 100% Indigenous-owned company and certified with the Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business.
Lynch.
Carl, always a pleasure.
No intro needed for you, my friend. Not in this vehicle.
No.
How are things?
Great, man. Great. Obviously the market's off the last couple of days, but I think we all were expecting a bit of a pullback after that, move to 4,000 and so forth. And then obviously it's the broader market that's really correcting, and that could be extended. We don't know. We've always said, that people should be taking money from the big seven and putting it into commodities. If you look at the difference between equities and commodities, has never been so high. So the contrarian play is, play the commodities stocks like mining stocks, etc. Now, in a general market sell-off, all things will go down temporarily, and
Sure.
I think that's what we're seeing. But I think we were talking off camera, saying, hey, this is just the first. We're in the first batter, the first inning of a 9-inning game, and it might go 18.
Right.
This is going to be the mother of all runs.
Well, if the generalist doesn't want to understand that Indivia's market cap is the size of Japan, and on a weighted basis, pretty much close to 10% of the S&P 500. I mean, that's problematic. A lot of growth. I think the price to earnings was over 500. Crazy.
Yeah, it's and as they say, and these things can stay mad for many years, and they have, So,
Yeah.
But at some point, eventually, they do come back to reality.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a great time to be looking at pushing more and more of your. I'm saying to people, they should be definitely putting more weight in the commodity sector, in the mining sector, in all forms, buying physical, owning big companies that are producing, owning, great explorers. That makes sense. And if you can't stomach buying individual stocks, then buy the mining funds.
That's right. Yeah. Let's get an update on Power Metallic, because it has, the last time I had you in the vehicle, it was, we were in Quebec.
Yep.
So there's been lots of news releases out there, my friend. You want to kind of go over maybe the last 2 to 3 months?
Yeah, sure. So obviously we raised the money in February, the $50 million at $1.45 a share, although the company received $2.50 thanks to the Quebec financial structures we were able to employ. And what have we been doing with it? Basically, the question we're trying to answer with that money is, how big is NIST going to be? There's no doubt in our mind that there's enough there to be an economic mine, and a lucrative one right now. But the question is, will it be just a regular mine? Will it be a large mine, or will it be a world-class mine? So that's the question we're trying to answer with this money. So we're in the midst of a 100,000 meter drill program. We drilled 17,000 meters this summer, and we released probably about half those results right now, and they're showing the line zone growing, which is what we said we'd try and do. The other thing we're trying to do is find the next line zone, because these things, the orthomagmatic deposits, which is what we have, typically have multiple pipes like the line zone. Right now we found the one. We think there's multiple to be found. We haven't found the second one yet, but we've got some pretty good sniffs. And one of the things we did when the market got a little soft after we raised the money, as we went out, we said, hey, we don't have nearly enough land here. There are times in the resource world where when you make a discovery, you have the recipe for what made that discovery possible. Geologically what happened, geophysically what happened, geochemically what happened. And so you have information, that nobody else has. And so the question we asked ourselves is this a onesie? That just is this likely to have happened just this one time, or is this likely to have happened over this basin? In these types of discoveries, this is much more likely to happen over a basin.
Sure.
So we believe this basin is ripe for exploration. And we looked and we sort of felt that there was 8 sort of what we called super targets that basically had the same geological, geophysical, and geochemical recipe that we had sort of put our research team together on. And then we've gone in the last several months, acquired 7 of the 8.
Right.
Okay, so that's really key. I don't think the market's quite clued in on that.
Because they're not speculating on that.
Yeah, you know what? They just aren't really cluing into just how big this is going to be. I mean, I think people think, oh, Terry's, talking a lot of, talk here, but, the reality is, based on the science we've already got, these things just don't happen like this small. Every orthomatic discovery to this point has been at least 1 million tons of contained materials, and some are in excess of 10 million tons. Today, we're probably, argue somewhere between 500 to 700,000 tons, as be what analysts would say we probably got. So are we going to get bigger? I think so. Are we going to get much bigger? I believe so. And could we get like super stupid big? That's possible. And as an investor, and that's what you're here, representing your follow the money investing group, you're looking for those asymmetric opportunities where you're not paying for the upside, but you're getting the upside, right? Yeah. And you're buying it at a discount. I mean, right now, I don't know. Yesterday was $1.15. The last round we did at $1.45. We don't need cash. We're not raising money. Yeah. So it's like you're buying it 30 cents off what the pros bought. The best minds in mining, like Robert Friedland, Rob McEwen, all the big mining funds put money in $1.45 for their second and third time.
Yeah.
So it's like,
right.
It's averaging up, which is what you want to see, right? And I think that was a good move, and it will prove that those were good numbers, over time. But right now, through an anomaly in the market, it's down, and based on fear and stuff like that. But I think our results are speaking for themselves. We're going to find more in the lion zone. We're going to, I believe, find other lion zones, and we're going to maybe find the mother of this deposit, which would really blow the thing up. So it's all systems go. We've got the land, we got the people, we got the money. We're well into the drill program. We'll have lots of news. We just released some news this week. I would expect the next set of news to come out just after American Thanksgiving. Is my guess on the assay side of things. And then the other thing that we've been talking about that I think will be a big mover for our stock will be our listing on New York.
Right.
Canada's always been troubled, with the bloody short sellers and stuff like that, and just the lack of capital invested in Canada. I mean, last year as a nation, we only invested $20 billion. We used to invest $100 billion all the time.
Yeah.
And you think about, just think about this. I was at an event about 10 days ago in Banff, and I was listening to one of the board members of Vanguard. She's a very, high-level money manager, talking about the $400 billion being invested over the next 3 or 4 years each year by just the big four: Microsoft, Facebook, Amazon, and Google.
In AI?
In building AI data centers. $400 billion each year for 4 years. Canada couldn't invest more than $20 billion in the whole country. Is that not absurd? But speaking of that investment, people talk about, well, copper, maybe there's going to be a recession, so maybe copper isn't going to take off. I'm saying, guys, you're missing the plot here, because copper is going to take off, because even if there is a recession, we're going to skate through it this time, because the demand for the AI centers for copper is going to be beyond. And that's going to take up any slack on the doctor economy side of things. That's going to pull back on the copper. And then, also look at what's happened on the copper supply side. Nothing but bad news.
Sure.
Everywhere you go, Agno's reducing output. Obviously the Freeport McMoran had its problems in glass over in PNG, and then Africa with Freeland, and then Panama. So there's been issues, right? So it's not easy, and so you got demand ramping up, and once in a lifetime crazy demand from AI, and then the whole electrification theme. It's going to be crazy bullish, I think, for copper.
So if there is some sort of liquidity event where everything gets hammered, right?
Yep.
Basically, what you think is going to happen on a relative basis is money managers that understand the thesis that you just put forth are going to buy these stocks at, you think they're already at a discount now. There'll be crazy discounts at that point.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
that's what we would see. Buy the dips
and I think what these guys will do is they'll have a number where they'll start to layer in. And they, because you don't mind, because you're basically looking to have a average grade entry point, and it's like I was talking to somebody this morning at our breakfast presentation, and I said, if you liked it at $1.45, you got to love it at $1.15, or you maybe really shouldn't have bought it at $1.45.
Yeah.
If the theme is still the same, you know, if the thesis is still strong, so why wouldn't you like it when it's more on sale? You know what I mean? I mean, I'll subject you having the capital to invest in those types of issues, but I think for us, the interesting thing, and one of the reasons why we're looking at moving to New York is that, you know, right now NYSE less than 1% in mining. Back in the day, it used to be 10%.
That's right.
So the, you know, the generalist mining investor has not come to the table yet. They're starting to get educated. They're starting to try and learn about the space. You know, that's why programs like yourself would be so invaluable to help people learn, you know, what are the questions to ask, you know, who are the people to trust, those types of things are going to be so important because people have no clue. Nobody's talked about mining for many, many years.
So if there's one takeaway, selfishly, that I'm taking away as someone who has, you know, a finance community or communities,
Yep.
is how can I do a better job of getting the generalist investor in? Can you define what a generalist investor is? So I know who to target better.
So I would say a generalist investor would be somebody that's generally not investing in individual stocks to the most part, has done a lot of its investing through in pension funds, mutual funds, you know, ETFs, and so to the most part that sector has not really been prolific in mining. Okay, so now they're hearing, you know, they've probably had a lot of their portfolio, you know, they were at the big banks. Remember, 90% in our country, in Canada, 90% of all assets financially are with the big banks. So they're pretty much prohibited from investing in mining. Like literally, you know, I think only now is Power Metallic eligible to be invested in, you know, because we're above 250 million, you know, but up until then, it was like you had to go through all sorts of special permissions and brokers. It's a pain in the butt for the broker, and it's just wrong, but nonetheless, that's where it's at. So most people's money are in these big tech stocks, and I think, you know, obviously they've done very well, and maybe they're addicted to those things, but the reality is, you know, like we talked about, the divergence between the tech stocks and commodities has never been so wide. Nature doesn't like these things. Eventually, things come back to the median. You know, so you know, I believe, unfortunately, that, you know, tech stocks are going to come off, you know, perhaps in a big way, you know,
which is going
to affect everyone.
Yeah.
Which that's why temporarily everything could go down.
Yeah.
But you know, where you want to be, you know, when things settle out, and these things tend to happen quickly. Mm-hmm. Boom. Yeah. You know, and then all of a sudden. And you know what? There's a lot of money on the sidelines too.
Sure. Maybe waiting for that.
Maybe waiting for that. Yeah, for sure. I know some of the really legendary fund managers were over 50% cash.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, so they're only in their super strongly convicted names that they've held for a long time. Do they maintain their position? Otherwise, they're maintaining the cash because they're waiting for the opportunity to buy on the bargain.
Well, and I think that's a key takeaway from this event here is, you know, it's an odd thing to talk about with a CEO, you know, saying, well, because we, you know, you're usually trying to get people to buy right now, and that's great because we don't know if that's going to even happen.
Yep.
Right. But at the same time, there seems to be this narrative where it's like, you know what? I think I'm just going to be looking at what the best names and projects and people that I want to invest in, and then when I see an opportunity, you know, something like that, I'm going in.
Yep.
It's true, right? Like,
yeah, for sure. You know, and I think, you know, you probably eyeball it, you know, and then you know, you can look at the chart and you start to see some entry points in these things as, you know, it's unlikely to go below this level, and then start to layer in, you know, pick up your first 10 or 15% there, and then see if it goes lower by another 10%, etc. You know, so because it's very hard to try and pick the absolute bottom, you know, or the absolute top. That's why you layer in and layer out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've kind of talked about, like, what do you think about gold right now?
You know what? I mean, if you look at the charts and stuff, I think it could fall all the way back to 3,300. You know, that's in my case the worst case scenario. I don't think it'll happen, but I think it's possible. But I'm super bullish on gold. I mean, because look at the Canadian budget. What was it? You know, it's a ridiculous $79 billion deficit. That's like more than almost double what we've ever been before. And that's just Canada, right? It's not just Canada, it's everywhere. They're printing money. So what does that mean? Overall, you know, in gold denominated terms, gold is super cheap. You know, so will there be a technical pullback? It seems like that could happen. But there's also I can see a case, a very convincing case that next year we're going to have $5,000 gold, and then we could have $10,000 gold.
So I did a morning drive a couple days ago with Rick Rule, and we were talking about something that Peter Schiff had said that him and I both agree probably won't happen, which is Peter puts out this thing right now where he thinks that we're going back to the gold standard. I don't see it happening because the emperors, people that like to control and debase currencies and offshore inflation on us and whatever, they do that because they can with fiat currencies.
Yep.
Right? You're being held to a standard and being held accountable with gold unless they find another way to tweak things, right? So for that reason, I don't see that happening.
I agree.
So then Rick agreed with me, but also he said, I said, what's your internal model? How do you look at what real inflation is? Because I know most people in our space believe we have negative rates right now when you actually quantify real inflation,
yep.
What hits your bottom line. And he said, I can see the US dollar being diluted by 70% in the next 10 years, which would, in his opinion, maybe 2 to 3x gold price.
Yeah.
Everybody you have to have your own model. This is the whole thing. You can't just listen to other people. But you have to do the research and go, well, what do I think is going to happen? And look at the debt and how is the US going to fix the debt?
I was out at Banff Springs for a conference in this commission that I'm on, and the rooms were about, I don't know, $800 or something like that. It was expensive, and I thought, wow, $800. And they told me that when they opened the Banff Springs, the rooms were $3.50. And I did the gold thing.
Yeah.
It's actually the same price.
Oh, really?
$350 is now $800.
Yes. That's right.
And I did that just at a fun, just because I'm a geek.
Yeah, I do the same stuff there.
And there it was. Yeah, it's so obvious, how much our money's been just fried away, by all this nonsense and waste and crap, but holy cow. So you definitely, hey, in corrections like this, it's good that you've got cash, because now possibly you can get real assets cheaper.
Yeah.
But is there any doubt that you need to be in real assets or you're going to be savaged? Yeah. I feel really sad for our seniors and veterans and people that are in fixed income. Yeah, they're stealing from these guys.
Oh, yeah.
And they built this country, and I don't know if it's been overtly planned this way or that's just the way the whole systems work, but it's a tragedy, and nobody's talking about them. They're forgotten people, and it's super sad. But it just means, like, if you're a practical person and you're listening to this, you got to say to yourself, how do I survive practically? How does my family survive and prosper practically? Well, you need to get into real assets. What are real assets? Well, they're companies like ourselves that are finding metals that are going to be produced, and they're going to be, create value, because whatever price they come out of the ground at, we're going to make money, or we won't be able to get the money to get out of the ground.
That's right.
So
there has to be an economic plan.
So that's what and that's why real assets make sense, And I think given like the scarcity of the critical minerals and the scarcity of precious metals, it makes most sense to get into those right now, because they've had a major amount of underinvestment over the last 20 years, and now for the first time in my lifetime, presidents and prime ministers are talking about mining. They never gave a shit.
Yeah.
And now
I see articles every other day.
They're talking about it, and they're writing checks. So it's like, follow the money. So it's like, people. I've had people come to me when gold had that run just before this correction started to happen. I said, I've missed it. I said, are you crazy? The guys who bought these mining stocks are mining guys. They're generalists. It hasn't even gotten in. It's early days.
Yeah.
And now you've got this correction. Take advantage of it. It's going to be. This is going to get biblical, and it's you're going to need to find a place where there's a true store of value, and there's true stores of value here. They need our minerals. People either grow stuff or they extract stuff. That's how real things get made. Okay, computers that run NVIDIA chips, that truck. All that stuff came out of the ground.
Yeah.
Okay, and what we eat is grown. So it's like, that's real. Okay, you can't fake that. and you got to need it, so, and we've been not putting any money in it, and here we are. So we're in shortage situations across the board, which means there's going to be an alpha, in the commodity prices, which is going to be create alpha for the stocks. So obviously we're, speaking to the choir here, but as setups get, it doesn't get much better, I don't think.
I'm going to do one more lap with you.
Okay.
And so it'll be about 3 to 4 minutes here. Pedak, you're on the board.
Yep.
So for people that watch these that are in our space, any changes that you're trying to push through? What do you?
You know what? Honestly, I haven't been as effective at Pedak as I'd like to have been. Just I've gotten so busy this year, and I've just reached out, to the finance committee. We're going to try and do something more to support the naked short selling. I've met with the Prime Minister's office. I've made them aware of this, even though securities are not a federal jurisdiction. It's a national security problem. When Canada can only raise $20 billion, half it was in mining given, but still we used to raise $100 billion all the time. Like, we need a lot more capital. Forget that the government programs are coming. We got good tax structures and stuff like that. Those are all fine, but if there's no equity to invest, if there's no, it's like, Eric Sprott said, look, the average investor feels like he's getting abused, and I'm not going to invest. Well, that's still happening, unfortunately, right? And so I think Pedak's got a role to play leadership-wise to do that, and I'm going to try and do more with the Pedak team to bring that forward. And we haven't done it yet. I hope to do so in the future.
I wonder how Pedak can try to get the generalists, because that's like that's the frontier of events for mining.
Yep.
So how can they get more generalists in? That's the question I ask myself right now. Right? How can we get more people that don't understand the very things that you've been preaching in this vehicle, and get them to understand where how much money they can probably make in this space?
Yeah, you know what? It's the challenge for marketing any product, right? Is how do you create more customers? So I know what we're trying to do, for our own company, is on our X pages and our approaches there. We're trying to tell stories, to people, so that people can relate to it more as a story, remember the story, as opposed to what's an orthomagmatic deposit. That sounds like, oh, that's over my head. That's sure. A big word, but if you bring in the romance of what is on Voisey's Bay or what is on Urals, and what did that mean in terms of transformational wealth creation, that type, then people can start to get, oh, well, that sounds interesting,
Sure.
So I we're trying to become more of a storyteller, to the generalists. And I've taken some heat from mining guys who are saying, why are you doing that? You know what I mean? I'm saying, well, I'm not doing it to get to you, because you're either going to own my stock or you're not going to own my stock. You've got your own set of criteria. I'm happy to, we've had conversation. So I'm reaching you already. I'm not reaching the generalists, and we got to reach the generalists. So that's who I'm trying to reach out here to this, and I'm trying to educate them in a way that we think they can assimilate, so they'll at least start to get interested, and then maybe they'll learn over time that they can know, like, and trust me, and then possibly based on that they'll decide to invest in my company.
I love that. I love it. I'm surprised they actually didn't. They don't have their own teams that understand. That's the one takeaway I have on the marketing side, is the generalist is not here. So I'm just thinking, how do we fix it? I think there needs to be a coordinated effort with a whole bunch of companies, like 30 or 40 companies that can allocate some money to advertising campaigns and initiatives outside of this space.
Well, and it also has to be, I think this is where government has a role to play. Not in necessarily financing this, but in strategically, by setting up these critical mineral funds and stuff like that. That's giving exposure. Now we need the talking heads in media.
Yes.
Not just independents like yourself, but when's the last time CBC did anything pro on mining? Or CTV. You know what I mean? So we need our newspapers talking about it, because again, we reach people through the media. The mainstream media's impact has gone down, but it's still powerful. They're not talking up mining as an opportunity. They're still selling this mining's dirty shit, which is complete crap. But they're still selling it, and so they need to get off that program to saying, hey, mining's essential. Mining's what and resources is what built our country and can rebuild it if given the opportunity. And they should be selling, hey, not only can we create great wealth for ourselves and our families by investing in mining, but we can also create great tax bases and jobs for our communities to help Canada get back on its feet. And
That's
this
right.
is what we need. That's the positive message that needs to be taken, across the country, around the world, and that's there. I do see embryonic signs of green shoots that they're going to try and do this. So I'm generally, I got to say, I'm more optimistic now than I've been in a long while on that.
Well, when you have the head of the Bank of Canada coming out saying that Canadians need to accept a lower
Standard of living.
standard of living, that's ridiculous.
That is
we have
ridiculous.
we have all the. Well, I mean, he felt he had to make the statement, and maybe it's good. It's a shocking statement to make for people to hear. But at the end of the day, we have so many resources in our great nation that we definitely should not have to accept that.
No.
If anything, we should be a leader.
Oh, 100%. And accepting less is just a bad concept. You know what I mean? You'll shrink all the way down. It's the cod fishery thing again, where we're just allowed the overfishing, and then there's nothing left.
That's right.
You keep on cutting back. There's soon there's nothing left to cut. So we need to figure out, how do we grow? Well, people need minerals of all sorts. They need our oil and gas. They need our hydropower. They need our uranium. All that stuff that can be profitably found, discovered, put into productive, consumptible form. That's going to create a ton of jobs, a ton of wealth.
I think the second half of this interview is very important. No, not to say the first half about your company, Power Metallic, isn't, but you've made some really good points, because you and I probably don't sit there and watch the CBC, but they have massive influence on Canadians.
Massive.
You see it. We talk to people, and you can almost identify, like, okay, they watch the CBC or whatever. They do need to be the influencers here, and other stations, about how Canada, they need to be educating Canadians on how we should be investing in these things.
Yeah.
Right. And tainting things as dirty, like uranium, for as a prime example. If you're going to electrify the world, which whatever, you can't do it with dirty baseload power. You have to have clean baseload power, which at scale is probably going to be uranium.
Yeah.
Look at what Cameco's done recently with the U.S. government.
Yeah.
So we need to get you on an X space.
All right, let's do it.
I said that before, so that's on me.
Okay.
Go in the description of this video. I'll line something up, and I'll put the X space in this video so you can add it to your calendar.
All right, sounds good, man. Great
All
seeing
right.
you again, Carl.
Take care.
Cheers, buddy.